Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I am your host, Virginia Prodan. I'm so glad that you are sending us your comments and your suggestions. And one of the suggestions that was about to talk about leadership. And we have today the most qualified person in the world that can talk about leadership. He is a very, very precious friend that play a very important and still plays a very important part in my life, in my family life, and especially in my son's graduate from Air Force Academy. So our guest is Chad Hennings. He is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, an Air Force veteran, and he also is an author, a businessman, has a ministry he will tell you much more about. What I want and what I suggest is make sure that your place where you listen to the podcast, it's quiet, take notes, because Chad will give you amazing suggestions that you can apply them right away. Thank you so very much, Chad, for coming to our podcast, for returning to our podcast. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for who you are, and also grateful for your impact in our family. I will never forget when I met you for the first time, when my son applied for United States Air Force. You were in charge of the committee. And I remember you came to take my son and you shook my hands, you introduced yourself, and you said, "Mom, I'm going to bring your son back." I never forgot that. That's what you said to me. But you also play a very important role in anytime he will come home, you will take him to lunch, different situation, and you invested in him a lot. So to me, your leadership is part of who you are. Can you tell us a little bit how this leadership started in your life and how the leadership flourished?
Sure. For me, I learned that the importance of leadership and why leadership is important through athletics. I grew up playing all kinds of different sports. And to me, athletics is the best leadership laboratory that there is. And that's why I encourage parents to get their kids involved in athletics, not just for the physical benefits, but it's the aspect of understanding conflict resolution, understanding how to communicate a proper message, setting goals, working hard to achieve goals, perseverance, resilience, all these different character traits I learned through athletics. And that's where, to me, it spurred on for me this aspect of what is leadership and why it's important. And as you alluded to my story, I grew up in a small Midwestern town in Iowa, grew up on a farm, was able to play all kinds of different athletics, but I wasn't really highly recruited, but I went to the Air Force Academy. I had success, both on the gridiron as well as in the classroom. And I was able to then go on and fly jets for the Air Force, flew in the first Gulf War. And as you alluded, the 3-time Super Bowl champion, played for the Dallas Cowboys for 9 years. So I've been exposed to all different types of leadership styles and concepts of leadership. But Virginia, what I can boil it down to is leadership is basically, it's the taking care of your people. It's setting the example, setting the bar high, and showing people, telling them where we're going to go, take the organization or take the team. This is what we want to do. We want to be Super Bowl champions. Showing them how we're going to get there, and then motivating them to accomplish that goal and to do everything that it takes to accomplish the goal. Understanding that there are going to be setbacks, understanding that there are going to be obstacles that are going to have to overcome. But that's where I personally learned, and that's what stimulated for me why leadership's important, because I've experienced it in my own life in a variety of different areas, whether that was flying in a fighter squadron to playing in a professional football team to owning my own business where I have young guys underneath me. I don't care what you do. It's the universal truths. Those basic principles remain the same no matter what you do, because what you do doesn't define who you are, of course, but it's those traits. And I think every good leader, before they can be a leader, they have to understand that one very important principle is identity. Who are you? And again, I alluded, what you do does not define who you are. So what defines your identity? Why do you do what you do? And then behind that, the mindset of, is it a growth mindset, fixed mindset? What I mean by that is those character traits that you have in accomplishing the goals that you set. Are they fixed where you're never going to get them better? Your mindset regards to that? Or do you take the mindset that I can work to improve? That we're on a journey, that I'm never going to truly reach the destination of living a life of excellence, but it's the journey of getting better each and every day along the way. So in a nutshell, I mean, I hit a lot of topics for you there, but that to me is how I got on my leadership journey and why it's important to me.
I love what you said and how you outline all of this and the importance of identity, because people in life, if you don't know your identity, and for me is identity in Christ, and that can never change, and that gives you value, even in a society or around people that will try to put you down. That will create roots in you. And also, you are talking about purpose. I believe that each one of us, we have a purpose in our life. And we have to find that purpose in order to accomplish what we were created for. And the other thing that you said so important is that life is a journey. And when you have identity, when you have purpose, your life is a journey, and you don't compare with anyone else but with you yesterday in order to grow. And I love the way you put all this together. But in leadership, tell us how you see mistakes. We are humans, and we can make mistakes, and others in our team can make mistakes. What is your approach about mistakes?
Mistakes are inevitable. We're human. We're fallible. It's what you do. Again, I go back to that growth mindset. Mistakes are going to be made. So what are we going to learn from it? And how can we get beyond it? And how can we improve? We need to hold each other accountable, hold ourselves accountable, and hold those around us accountable to accomplish, our core values, who we proclaim to be. But mistakes they're a part of life. And believe me, I've made many mistakes, and I've learned more from my mistakes and from the quote unquote losses that I've had in life than I have from, pretty much any victory. Or the obstacles overcome, because that's what makes it so sweet, is what makes life so much enjoyable is when you do make a mistake, you learn from it, and then you move beyond it and achieve something greater. I look back and when we were winning Super Bowls, I mean, there are so many mistakes that we would make as individual players on the field or as units, as a defensive unit. But you make halftime adjustments, you come back out, you improve upon that, you don't make the same mistake twice. And, we went on to be Super Bowl champions. But none of those seasons were perfect where we went undefeated. We got beat. We lost. And, and we lost individual battles within each series or each game. But it was the aggregate of pulling all that together. It's how you finish, ultimately, is what truly matters. And like you, I want to hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant," at the end of my days, because I know that my setbacks, the mistakes that I've made, will all be covered by the blood of Christ. But, I want to say that I worked on my sanctification, where I was able to improve my character, my integrity, and, my skill set. That's what I contributed to it.
I love what you said about mistakes. I noticed, I don't remember when, but the good Lord helped me to learn from my mistakes and to put it like a stepping stone so I can go ahead of what I learned. But I also discovered a sweeter form of mistakes, and that is to learn from other people's mistakes and to ask them questions and to say, what kind of mistakes? And by doing that, first of all, I didn't have bruises anymore from my own mistakes, and I avoided, learning and everything. So I believe it's very important to surround yourself with good people that love to pull you up and share with you what kind of mistake they made, and you learn from that.
It is a great point. In the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom, right? He who walks with wise men will be wise.
Yes.
Who are your relationships? But I think, we have that characteristic of being human that, somebody may tell us, don't do this, learn from me by not doing this, do it this way. But sometimes in our own pride and our own arrogance, we have to feel the pain at times before we truly own it. And that's where my kids, that's why we discipline our kids, right? Is because at that time, you don't want them, sometimes they don't listen, but they sometimes have to feel the effects of the decisions and the actions that they've taken and have made in order for that to stick to where they own it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a little kid or sometimes you're an adult or you're a CEO of a company. There's one thing, you tell yourself you listen, but sometimes we have to actually feel the pain ourselves. But great point you made.
It's also a very rewarding point later on in time. You teach your kids, you punish them if they don't do what is right and everything. They roll their eyes. Like I have 3 of them against me. But then later on, when they are 18, 20, 30, you get a call and they said, Mom, I became you. And I like, okay, hold on just 1 second. I'm not perfect. What exactly? And they would say, do you remember what you did when we did that? Now we are doing with our kids because we see the benefit and how much that influence. Sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we think, well, I don't know if this kid will ever learn or something, but that's not true. The Bible said, teach a child, when it's small, and later on we'll do the same thing. But I want you also develop a business. And you talk about leadership and what are you requiring from your people. Lots of people have in their mind or focus money, how much money they can make. Other people have in focus how many life they will touch through their business, because maybe sometimes I'm thinking those people, they think what God says, seek first the kingdom of God and the rest will come. But there is a difference in leadership and also in business people. There are people that focus only on making money. Others, they put a balance between touching people's life and having money. How did you approach in your business those kind of approaches? Or maybe you have another one.
Great point being made is, I'll just define kind of that living excellence is, for me, it's living a life, knowing who you are, your identity, and then living each day to its fullest with character and integrity. That to me is it. I've been around organizations that that their main goal is, hey, we're just about making the money, but we're just about material things, or we're about making a dent in the social media world, whatnot, and they're not lasting. I look back on my life, and we alluded a little bit before. I was able to accomplish and achieve pretty much everything that I put my hand to. All-star student athlete in high school, academic All-American, unanimous All-American, Hall of Fame college football player, combat fighter pilot, 9-year career in the NFL, 3-time Super Bowl champion. But it was a major trial in my life with the health of my son that made me realize that those things that I had accomplished, they were just that. They were things. So to me, when people concentrate on material gain as defining success, or money, fame, social status, whatever, it's not lasting. It's meaningless. To me, it's the aspect, you nailed it, is relationships, impacting the lives of those people around you. So, as a leader of a business, for me, leadership was helping them become their best person that they could be. Okay. Or that may have been through increased knowledge of whatever business we were in, how to become a better salesperson, a better communicator, help them realize who they are, where their identity lies. And that's because when you give an individual those tools, when you lead them down that path, they're self-sustaining. There's loyalty, there's bond. It's not just about, hey, you gave me a paycheck today. And, that's where I heard a great saying the other day on a podcast that I was on, where the individual said, as business owners, we need to be slow to hire and quick to fire an individual. So be very careful to make sure that any individual that you bring in to your organization fits within the character and the core values of who you are. But if they don't, they can become a cancer. And I've seen that so many times, both in a fighter squadron as well as in a locker room, where you get the wrong free agent coming in, and it's soon that the atmosphere in that locker turns south really fast. And all of a sudden you realize you may have the best talent on the field, but you're losing games. Why is that? Because it's just that it factor is not there. So that to me is how to deal with leadership in a business, and focusing on what's truly the most important. Yeah, you need to make money. You need to pay the bills. You need to do that. But that is a byproduct of the other things that I discussed.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. You are also an author. You wrote several books, and I had the honor and a privilege that I will never take it for granted to be part of your book, Forces of Character. You are a great speaker. I had the honor and a privilege to hear you at several events. Tell us how you use your leadership skills and position writing those books and speaking.
Well, for me, to be a truly effective and impactful leader, you have to be transparent. You have to be willing to open up the kimono, per se, to allow people in to influence you in making the decisions, meaning that the leader is not the sole individual at the top of the pinnacle. And a lot of times that's where pride goeth before the fall. You need to surround yourself with individuals that you're willing to listen to, that can, again, give you good advice, as we discussed before. But for me, I realized early on too, to be an effective leader, you have to be a great communicator. And that can be both in the written word and most certainly in the spoken word. And when you're doing that, it's like regarding rhetoric. You need to have ethos, pathos, and logos. Do you have credibility? Do you have the wisdom and the knowledge? And do you have the passion? And I particularly, these younger generations, I guess these kids today, as they play video games, they absorb so much information so fast, they develop a pretty decent filter of, are you sincere? Are you truthful? Can I trust you? And that's where I talk about the transparency as being a leader, that you have to, people can see through pretty quick if you're putting up a facade, that if you're acting, that this is not who you are. I mean, as an old coach of mine once said, it only catches up to you when it catches up to you, and it always catches up to you. So that's why you always do the right thing all the time. Be truthful, be transparent, be honest with your people. It may not be what they want to hear, but you got to tell them the truth. And by leading by that example, as we talked about, we're all going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes, but watch me as I work through them. And when people can see that, it's going to inspire them that, hey, he made a mistake. He owned up to it. He's working hard to improve it. He's got that growth mindset. So do I. And it's like you tell your kids, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Yes.
Do your actions, are they bearing fruit? And that's what I try to do. And that's why I, wrote the books and do the speaking that I do.
Yeah, you are so right, because kids and even others around us will not look at what we said, but what our life exposes, what we do, how we relate in different circumstances and position. The best and the most touching compliment that I can receive is from my grandkids to call me and say, "Grandma, teach me how to be strong and courageous like you." It's the best, because that's what remains. That what will remain for generations to come. We are here to encourage others, and not to necessarily to point to us, but to the one who worked in us to be who we are today, or at the time that we leave this earth, and how they can relate in the power of Christ to do the same things. But before we finish, I want you to make sure that you tell our audience and your audience where they can find you, your business, your book, your leadership, everything.
Easiest place, just go to chadhennings.com, if you can remember my name. And that's where I've been very blessed to have written 3 books. It takes commitment, rules of engagement, and the one where you were nice enough to help me in my project, Forces of Character. So that's, if you like for me to speak to your organization or purchase books, that's the best place, is chadhennings.com. And thank you for allowing me to share that.
Oh, no problem. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to talk with you, Chad. You are a treasure of wealthy information. Your life and your family life speaks so loud, louder than your words. And I'm grateful to be part of your life, and part of you and your family to be part of our lives. And I hope everybody will look at your website and learn even more. Before we finish, there is anything that you want to add?
That what I would just reiterate on the subject we're talking about, leadership, everyone is called to be a leader in some capacity. Even if you don't see yourself as a leader, you're a leader because people are looking to you as a role model, as whatever stage of life that you're in, you're called to be a leader, and you can do it. So that's my just words of encouragement for those that are listening in your audience.
Thank you so very much, Chad. I appreciate so much you coming to our podcast and everything that you share with us. And I hope that everybody will go to Chad's website and will learn so much about. If you need any help, please go to virginiaprodanbooks.com/contact and tell us what you need. We are here to help you. I hope everything that Chad Hennings said, I know he said it from the bottom of his heart. He said it because this is who he is, a leader and a person who invests in others. And he has such a joy and such an honor to do those things. And you will learn so much just going there at his website and learn more about Chad Hennings. Thank you so very much, Chad. Again, it's an honor and a privilege to have you again at our podcast.
Thank you.